We are live. Hey, you guys. Welcome to Tuesday Night Live. I'm super excited that you joined us. Go ahead and come on in here. Make sure that you like and share it. We have an amazing guest. We have a wonderful topic, and it's really, really an important one that you guys have been asking about. So just come on in here. Welcome to 2021. I haven't spoken to you guys. I hope that this year is bringing you joy and peace, and you find yourself in a place of happiness. And if you find yourself in an abusive relationship, you know what I say? Let's safety plan and get you to safety, because you matter, and so do your children. So hopefully this is a year that your dreams start coming true and you get to safety and freedom. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to pop on in before I introduce our beautiful guests. Hey, when you come in, let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know where you are tonight. So my name is Lisa Alexander. For those of you that don't know, I'm the executive director and founder of Stand Up Survivor, and I'm so excited to be with you tonight. Hey, okay, so I have Miss Julie Boyd Cole. Hey, Julie.
Hi there.
Hi there, Julie. She is a journalist. She is an author. She is a survivor, and of course, she is a mother. And that's why this topic is so important to us tonight. And so I saw this article. Hey, from Maryland. I saw this article. I read this article about domestic co-parenting with your ex. And of course, I'm co-parenting with my ex. And this article was just so well written, and I had to bring it to you guys. So come on in here. Let's make sure that we take our notes, because Julie has some great stuff for you. So, hey, from Long Island. Hey, okay, from Australia, Arkansas, Idaho. They're coming in. Hey, from DC. All right, so we're going to get started because we only have an hour, and we want to give them some good information tonight. So, Julie, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, and what led you to even write about this.
Well, as you introduced me, I'm a journalist and a writer and a publisher and a businesswoman, and I was in a 15-year-long, physically abusive domestic violence relationship, and it was the most challenging relationship of my life, and I really went through a lot of denial and delusion about what was going on. The entire time I sought help, I really believed that something I could say or do would make it stop. I didn't want to end my marriage. I didn't want to end my life. I just wanted the abuse to stop. And I believed, unfortunately, that there was something I could do to make it do so. And I went through many therapists. But I never saw myself as a domestic abuse victim. I never saw myself as domestic violence victim. I really didn't think that that's what was happening, even though that was indeed what was happening. And so through all those, gurus.
Hold on 1 second. Yes. They're saying you have an echo. So I'm going to put on my headphones and see if that helps. Let me see. Okay. Y'all let me know if that helps. They're going to tell us the truth now.
All right. You know what else? I'll take off my headphones because maybe that'll. Is that echo gone? And I'm not sure, Lisa, I can't see you anymore, but my guess is that other people can see me because it's saying it's live. So we'll see how that goes. And let me just, it is, there's Lisa again.
All right, is the echo? Yeah, the echo's gone. So I don't know if it's what we both did, but it worked. Yeah, okay, echo's gone.
Good.
Thank you for letting us know. Thanks, y'all, for telling us what's going on so we know.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, I learned the hard way, as they say, what was going on, and right before my eyes. But when I finally did leave, everything changed. And then I went for 5 years where I had custody of my children. I have two children who are now grown. And at the time that I left, they were 6 and 10. And so I went for 5 years, pretty much okay. There was still some co-parenting, but mostly I had sole custody, and so that helped. And then what happened is my ex-husband sued me for custody 5 years after divorce. And my children were high school and middle school, so it was a crazy thing to do. And they were doing fine in life. There was no issues, but he just realized that he had that opportunity to do it, and so he did. And that started a terrible family court abuse that went on for years until my youngest son was 17. And so it was a long time of having to battle him in that environment, which was extremely unhealthy and very hard to do. And I'm a journalist and a researcher, and education is what got me out of abuse. Education is what I turned to for this. And so I decided, when it was all said and done, to put it into words and put it into a book. I started writing about it as a healing, cathartic issue. And I realized I was getting so many comments from people, from victims who were experiencing this and had nowhere to turn. So that's why I ended up writing articles, and then a book, and then a second, research book to try to offer help to others.
Well, I'm glad that you did, because that's how we found you. And you just have such good nuggets. It's because you've lived it, Julie, that makes it really different. And we're going to tell them all about the second book too, because I think they need to get both books. And I'm not saying this, I have it right in front of me, but I want to talk about some of the things that you talk about when you guys got together, and I know we talk about one of the most poignant statements you said was that I was able to ignore that I was a domestic violence victim and the vulnerability that I could be killed at any time. Because you talk about the first time that he hurt you, was when he put his hands around your neck, and you were pregnant at the time.
Yeah, I was. I was 9 months pregnant with my first child.
And it was the first year of marriage.
Yeah. And it was an out-of-body experience. I honestly thought that he was having an aneurysm. I did not compute. But instincts kicked in, and I was able to get him off me. And that started the physical. I had been emotionally abused through all before that, but the physical abuse started then. And I then later learned that physical abuse often starts in pregnancy because your abuser sees you as vulnerable. In other words, helpless. Mm-hmm. And so easy to physically abuse, easy to beat up, nobody else is, you can't fight back, that kind of thing.
And I kind of want to point out how important it is to recognize that this happened in the first year of your marriage. Mm-hmm. And you stayed for 15 years. And you talk about it a lot, about how, because you wanted to make it work, because you wanted to have, you picture the picket fence with the dog, with the kids, with the family, growing old together. And you tried endlessly to make that happen. So I just want to touch on, don't feel bad if you're listening and you realize that you've been in it so long and maybe I can't get out. It doesn't matter how long you're in it. It's realizing what you said. I could be killed at any time. And one thing, you guys, if you know me, I don't mince words about how domestic violence is life or death.
It is.
And so I want to talk about really quickly, before we get into the parenting part, you talk about going to a therapist. You were trying to save your marriage, right? Like so many of us have tried to do. And you weren't telling them about the abuse. You guys were just chit-chatting about household things that happen in the house, because no one's going to be really this vulnerable. And the day that you became that vulnerable, what happened that day?
Well, there are two situations, but the most important one probably is I told my therapist, I was just really exhausted with, so many years of trying to figure this out and keep married and give my children a non-divorce, their parents together. And I was just angry with my therapist and said, you've got to tell me what the answer is. Stop asking me questions. Just tell me what I need to do. And she just snapped and said, okay, I'm going to tell you. And she said, you got two choices. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to hear what they are. Finally, I'm going to hear. And she said, okay, the first option is you can, you've got to do everything he asked you to do. You can never really be angry with him. You cannot backtalk. You cannot disagree with him. And as she's ticking these things off, I'm thinking, wait a minute, I can't do that, because she's leading me down the path that, basically I can be a non-person. I can't have any desires or wants or needs or a bad day or a misstep. I have to be perfectly non-person. And as she was laying that out, I'm going, okay, that's not going to work. What's that other option? And I finally okay, I got it. What's option 2? She said, you can leave. And that's when it hit me. And,
and floored you right there.
Yeah. And
because
so
the other one wasn't an option. It really wasn't. You would be a non-person. There was another time when you went in and you finally said to the therapist, I'm being abused. And she says to you, well, why didn't you call the cops? Right? And
so that was the first thing that happened. That was a different therapist. And I went in with my at the time, husband. Mm-hmm. And I confessed it for the first time. And he was rigid. I mean, because, you know, he was ready for the you know, everything to drop. And as soon as she said, well, why didn't you call the police? He just brightened and turned to me and said, yeah, why didn't you call the police? In other words, he found a way to blame me and gaslight. You know, she, of course, was in over her head and horrified and was using a human reaction as opposed to a therapeutic one. Yeah. And I ran out. She followed me, and it was a disaster. And it taught me why you have to find good therapy.
Yep. And no, couples counseling, it's not beneficial for domestic violence. It's not. No. And so when you realize that, I like when you talk about, I was 41 and I had to start my life over. 41 with 2 children. So I just want to do a little extra again to anybody who's feeling, you know, number one, if it happens once, you can leave right then and there. You do not have to wait. But if you find that you've been married or in a relationship for so long and experiencing abuse, there's no limit to when you can leave. You know what I mean? So you realize that you were 41 and having to start life over.
Yeah. And I actually moved 600 miles away to a town where I knew no one and started a brand new career. It was scary as all get out. But I was also liberated in that first year. I felt safe for the first time. I felt hope. I hadn't felt hope in a very long time. And just hope for a new future. That lasted until the custody suit. And then it started again. And then I was abused by that.
I just want to say, like, I really want to celebrate how you said, I was definitely scared. I was scared. I was terrified, but I moved away and I started a new job and I started over. I was afraid. And I love that, Julie, because oftentimes I'm too afraid to, or I'm scared to, or what if? You'll never know if you don't try it. You know, it looks like being here in this abusive relationship or situation, but give yourself the risk or the chance for something else.
Yeah. Well, you know, I had another, blessing is the only way I can think about it. My mother, who was my best friend, she passed away early, and she passed away before I left, and she did not know that I was being abused. And the first time that I'm a believer, so the first time that my husband hit me after my mother's death, and she died at age 63, I was 38. 39. The first time that he hit me, I realized she saw that from heaven, and it gave me a new awareness of what it looked like. It sort of made me realize I was in a domestic abuse situation because my mother would not have wanted that for me, and I saw that through somebody else's eyes than my own, through my mother in heaven's eyes.
Okay.
And I realized that life is short, and that started a journey. I started to, you know, it took several years for me to leave. I mean, that's the truth. At that moment, I didn't think, oh my gosh, I'm leaving. In fact, I never really thought of divorce until the last year. But I knew that I had to get healthy. So I got healthy physically. Once that was done and I was, you know, in sort of very good shape and taking care of myself with doctors and so forth, I realized that I was still very unhealthy because I was in an unhealthy marriage. And so I spent about a year trying to give it one last try with my husband and tried one more therapist, that kind of thing. And I just knew, you know, it was done.
Yeah. And Nat, you said history does not mean that you have to stay. No matter the history that you have, and Julie's, it doesn't matter how long you've been with the person, how much you love them or how many children you have. It doesn't mean you have to stay. I see you guys talking about when you left and how old you were and the process of starting over. And we're here to say we know it's scary. We know we've done it. I love how you talk about you were ready to create a new dream. You had to let go and mourn. You talk about mourning the loss of what was or what you hope to be. And
Yeah.
that's in and of itself, that's mourning. And you talk about how you just kind of took the time to cry over it, and that's okay. I always encourage people, sit in it, sit in the pain, sit in the emotions. It's okay, to feel what you feel, because it's devastating.
Yes.
But you just don't stay there, but it's okay to mourn it.
Yeah, there's another sort of blessing about my mother's death is that I went through grief therapy, grief counseling, and that was, as sometimes happens, you have these parallel situations. So while I was grieving my best friend's death, my mom, I was able to really look at the fact that I also was grieving the fantasy of my marriage. And
Okay, hold on. I'm going to stop you, Julie. The fantasy. Okay, the fantasy is what you want it to be, or hope one day it would be, or hope one day it would get back to. The reality and the fantasy is very different, Julie. And the truth of the matter is, Julie, as abuse victims or survivors, we live in that fantasy. Every day it's the hope of what can be, or we live in the honeymoon period, not in the reality of what is. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just had to emphasize that because we have to be honest with ourselves.
Yeah. That's the real work, isn't it? Is to get honest with yourself, and when you do, then it all lines up, and then it's just a matter about executing.
And it's hard. But what I really like about your story too is, like, you guys, listen. She found the strength. She left. She got a boy. She relocated. She's healing, and then 5 years. Her ex-husband wants to file for custody. So let's go there, because we have people that are so concerned with co-parenting. It's not working. Parallel parent. They're still trying to manipulate. Hold on. Before you answer that, you wrote something when you talk about how, first of all, we're going to talk about how the court system is not necessarily equipped to help those who are co-parenting. But co-parenting with an abuser is the act of sharing your most treasured gift from God with likely the only person on the planet who will actively try to hurt you.
Yeah,
who has hurt you in the past, also in front of the children. So let's talk about what co-parenting looks. All of a sudden, he wants full custody of the children.
Yeah. It was, what happened is, for 5 years he avoided all of this because he had a relative local fame that he was trying to hang on to, and did not. I really can't get into his motivations. I can just tell you that he was pretty much not really involved in that. My suspicion is that it was out of fear that he would be found out as an abuser. And then, but what ultimately came to pass is that he realized that even as an abuser, it didn't matter. That family court really, and it's unfortunately worldwide. It's not unique to the United States. I mean, we see that there's somebody from Australia. I've had people from Hong Kong, Australia, Canada, England, all contact me because they're going through this, and it's the industrialized world, and it's really a bias in family court among judges that all parents have the right to parent their children despite the quality of the person or what has gone on. Even criminals. I've unfortunately heard of horrible situations where rapists have been given custody, partial custody. So
that's rough. That's really rough, because Julie, we've lived in the abuse. We know what they do in front of the children. Abusers don't care. In the home, they do it in front of the children, behind closed doors. And then you have to go in front of a judge and beg and plead and say, hey, this is what happens in my house. Please, please don't give them full custody. They need, parenting classes.
Yeah.
You're busy explaining yourself, begging the judges to see how domestic abuse really affects a child.
And here's the other thing. So when it first happened, I saw it coming. I could sense that my ex-husband was getting ready to do something dramatic. And so there were a couple of circumstances that gave me this, the hairs on the back of your neck, what's coming. And so my first attorney, she initially said, how are you going to prove this? Because I'm like, he's a domestic abuser. How are you going to prove this? And so then it was that, although to her incredible credit, she hung in there, and I was just lucky enough to have a really good attorney. And then the next thing is that he then stipulated to everything. He agreed, even though I had never called 911 on him, he had stipulated to everything. on the record to the judge that, yes, he had choked me when I was 9 months pregnant, and he had, everything I had recounted, he had done, and yet he still wanted custody, or he wanted a more custody, and he wanted say and physical custody. So I would see them, but he would control it, that type of thing. It was really, it took 8 months, and he eventually withdrew because his lawyers finally saw that this was going to be tricky in front of a judge. But I never had to get in front of the judge because he withdrew 3 days before our hearing. And it was extremely scary. I would say I was the biggest basket case. Yeah. Because at least with physical abuse, you're a basket case, and then you get better the next day, and blah blah blah. Like, I know I'm completely glossing over that, but there's a quicker end to the physical abuse than 8 months of legal abuse.
And it's a way for them to continue abusing. Co-parenting abusers, they continue to go for power and control while exploiting the victim and the children. It's not about they just love their spouse or their partner so much, they love the children so much. It's a way for them to still have a hand in the power and control.
Socially acceptable, because they look like, especially if they're dads, and this is not unique to gender. It's just that men have more power in our society than women. It's about power and control. And if if women had all the power, there'd be women abusers like crazy. It's just unfortunately the way it is. But right now, dads are considered, who seek custody, are really giving the pat on the back by society and judges, because remember that the statistics are in family court that most fathers that are in family court are there because a state is bringing them in for back child support. That is by and large what judges see day in and day out, day in and day out. And so about twice a month, they'll get a father who's going after custody and claiming, that the wife is not letting them see them, or the mother's not letting them see them, blah, blah, blah. And so the judges perk up and they go, oh, well, here's finally not a deadbeat dad. They don't understand that those good guys that are doing that those good dads, they're not in court because they're settling it out between themselves in a healthy way. And so it's contested custody, and the stat is like only 10% of divorce with children have contested custody, only 10%. Wow. And if the father is making the initial aggressions, like filing the motions, it's probably abuse by the father.
Exactly. And I was thinking that when you were saying that, I'm like, the 10% don't need it because they're actually working to take care of their children. You have the other ones who are using the court system to manipulate, what I mean?
To win, to fight and win. And,
Yep. I'm going to put her book. I see you guys asking about her book. I'm putting it up on the screen. We'll get into both of them. The first one is How to Co-Parent with an Abusive Ex and Keep Your Sanity. It's this one right here. Y'all know I don't hype a book up, but this one is so good. It really is juicy. She intertwines her story in it, and she gives you practical tools that can really help you. There's another one as well. So How to Co-Parent with an Abusive Ex and Keep Your Sanity. And Dear Family Court Judge. You have that one with you, right? Can you put that one up, Julie?
Yeah. This is really one to give to your attorneys, because all it is the results of a survey that I conducted over the course of about a year and a half with 220 victims of family court abuse. And there are a lot of myths. Now, there is a ton of research on this topic that's out there. The American Bar Association, there's just so much research, but what happens is the judges and the lawyers are not reading it.
Yeah. I noticed that you said I was reading, you said, I know that people are working to educate the court system, but my family needs help now, not when they're done being educated. And I think that speaks volumes for so many survivors that are going through this right now, is they continue to abuse through the court system. You found the strength to leave. So oftentimes people are like, just leave, get to safety. And that's huge. Honestly, that's the biggest thing right there. But what abusers do when you have children is they continue to abuse by using the children.
And the court system really in the industrialized world allows multiple, I mean, our Constitution allows anybody can file a lawsuit for any reason at any time. And when you have shared children that are minors, you can sue every other day if you want to. And so that's how
abusing.
It's like even if they lose, they can still sue. Like my ex did try to sue me again after that first failure and used the court system and the, you know, and really repeatedly over and over. But I had, I was more prepared, and there were some safeguards that made that harder for him. And so one of them was that he had to pay my legal fees. And so that is very unusual, but it can happen again. I had a very good attorney who was just hard as nails, and she just said, we are going after all of that because we've got to de-incentivize him from doing this again.
There you go. And you talk about getting good legal representation. And let's just be honest, everyone can't afford an attorney. You know, we know that some shelters do have legal representation that can assist, some do pro bono or sliding scale work. But what do you say, Julie, to someone who just can't afford a good attorney?
Right.
You know,
so yeah, the first thing I'll say is that I was very much a poor single mother at the time that all this was happening. I did not have money for a lawyer or for a psychologist or a therapist or a social worker is actually what I recommend. But I didn't have that. So I was very, very lucky that my attorney agreed from the get-go that she was going to go after, she took it on a contingency, which means I didn't have to pay anything up front. She believed that she would be able to get my ex-husband, that she would win that in court. And so she took a chance. I know of no attorneys who will do that. She was, the fact that she did it, I don't know why, but she did.
Yeah, that's a blessing.
The other thing is that I remember I did not see myself as a domestic abuse victim even all through that, but there was a shelter in my community and I walked in and I said, I need help. This was during the, you know, when I first was served. And I knew that I really thought I was going crazy. As it turned out, I was diagnosed with PTSD. And so I was in the full-blown symptoms of PTSD. I couldn't sleep at night, waking up at 3 a.m, you know, hypervigilant, all the things. And I really couldn't work. I was, you know, bedridden for days on end. I mean, it was really tragic. And so I walked into the shelter and said, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here, but I need help. And they just happened to have a program that they had just started to give free therapy to people who had been long time out of their abusive situation. Literally, they had just started the program, and I walked in. I was like their second client, you know, in this program.
But you know, Julie, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I had free therapy for 2 years. And
free therapy for 2 years. So first of all, I love how you talk about you took the step to walk in there. Like you didn't know that they had a program. You didn't know what was going to be on the other side of that door, but you took the step to walk in there. So if that's you, you're wondering, you need the help, make the phone call, send the email, walk in the door. So you don't know what opportunities are out there. You know, oftentimes people say, there's no help, but sometimes you have to knock on every door that you see. You know, sometimes you have to ask for pro bono work or whatever it is. You just can't be afraid. I want to divert something you just said about having PTSD. You talk about.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the comments. Remember, you're right. It's no joke, man.
Traumatic events are those that shock our system, that cause us to freeze in disbelief. I really like the way that you worded how a traumatic event affects you. So I'm going to read it again. Traumatic events are those that shock our system, that cause us to freeze in disbelief. I thought that was a really good way that you put that, because it literally is. Yeah. You know. Yeah. And that's why I had to. Sorry, go.
My therapist at the time, who I thank in the book because I really credit her for helping me, for healing me. She's not the only reason why, but she's a big one. But she taught me, you know, I was sitting there just saying, I'm going crazy. And she said, you're not going crazy. You have been traumatized and you need to heal. And that was a powerful statement. And then I was like, well, what's trauma? And she said, trauma is when, you know, you go like this and you don't exhale, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I know that feeling. And so those lessons, again, education helps me, understand things and get the lay of the land. If you're battling this, the reason why you need good therapy, if you're currently if you have minor children with your abuser, you have to be on your best emotional game, because the analogy I use is that we're on a life raft with our children in a hurricane out in the ocean, and we are trying to get to shore, and the waves come at all different directions, and all you're doing is to try to paddle and stay afloat and keep those babies on board. And it's very hard, and you don't know where the next wave's coming from. And that's how come there is no real path to here, I can give you this and this is what you do, because I don't know what your judge is like. I don't know what your lawyer's like. I don't know who you got to beg for money. I don't know if I don't know what you have to do, but you do. You do know. And it may be buried under fantasy or denial or depression or PTSD, but you do know it's wrong. You've just been gaslit. And so the key is to try to shore you up and build you up so that you can figure out your path out until laws change. And laws will change one day, but they weren't going to change fast enough for me.
First of all, Julie, can I just celebrate the analogy you just used? I'm very visual, and I don't know who else felt like that whole raft in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of a hurricane, and you just have you and your babies on it trying to survive. And I just love that, because I literally could visualize that, and literally that's exactly what it's like. Oh no, Did I freeze? Am I frozen?
Yeah, no, I can see you. Can you hear me?
Okay, good. Yes. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So literally, it's just like that. And I appreciate that visual, because I think it gives people an example of, okay, it's not perfect. And when you said there's no map, we can't even say, hey, Julie and Alicia's like, hey, take this road. No, your road is going to be different. Your country or state you live in is going to be different. Your personal situation, your finances, everything's different. So while we can give you some examples of things that you can do, everyone's road is different. Let me just say.
And the key is don't give up. And, I've been watching the comments that you all are posting, and, what's so inspiring is how many people are saying that, that they've left, or they're doing it, or they're fighting. But I know the questions I've also seen is, what do I do when he manipulates and the judge? And I'm going to tell you, that's one of those waves that's crashing over the raft, and you've got to figure out, and sometimes you are not going to be able to figure it out. Sometimes they're going to win that battle, or they're going to get to your kids. My kids are grown and scarred, but they're good. We've been able to slowly recover, and it's that analogy, when they graduated high school, I felt like I got them to the shore because they were alive. And
that's good.
And that's the relief, and then they ran off and started their lives. And I was just, there going, whew, that was.
I did it. Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I wanted to comment. The comments went so fast, but I wanted to say to someone who said, I wish that I was that strong a long time ago. You were strong when you were strong. Whether it was the first year or the 20th year, you were strong when you were strong. Don't regret it. Just move forward, because otherwise you kind of stay stuck,
That's so true, Lisa. And, I will tell you that, even to this day, now I'm out of that relationship 15 years, and my youngest is 22. So, we've been out of it for a while. I still struggle with regret. And and my youngest likes to talk about this stuff a great deal. He's going to be an advocate one day. I just know it. But he'll ask, do you wish you could go back and make a different decision? And I said, well, we don't get those kinds of magic wands in life, but if I had one, I would have made their father healthy. That's what I would have done. I wouldn't have said, oh, I'll never, I'll run, because I have these two wonderful children because of this marriage.
Yeah. That's a good one. I like that, Julie.
Yeah.
Someone else had said,
I have PTSD, but it's hard to admit it. It's hard to say it out loud. Okay, and I agree. It is difficult to say it out loud, but oftentimes we can't heal or move forward or work on something if we don't acknowledge it and even say it out loud. So knowing that you have it, and then it gives you opportunity to deal with it. You get the help that you need. You don't get frustrated with yourself when you can't sleep or you're having triggers. You understand this, what's going on with me.
Yeah, I would say I'm a very private, very proud person and have been my whole life, raised in an environment where we don't talk about anything like this. And I did the opposite. But for 15 years, I hid. I told no one, until I finally told the therapist. I told none of my friends. I did not tell my best friend's sister, my best friend mother. I told no one because I was ashamed. And I also thought if I told it, it would be real, and then I'd have to do something about it. But and I didn't want to give up. That was what was going on. I had hope. I didn't want to give up. But the thing is that what I learned is it is what our truth is. Here's the thing. My truth is that I had 15 years of domestic violence. No, it does not make me happy. Yes, it is tragic, and I wish I didn't have a tragedy. But I know people who have had far worse tragedies in their life. And so we all can't get through life unscathed. And this is just the journey that I've taken. When I've talked about it, when I initially bring it up, I initially say it, like that first therapist who looked at me and said, "Why didn't you call the police?" It is painful. It is not easy to say I have PTSD for the first time. It is very hard. When I told my children that I had PTSD, it was very hard. I was ashamed to tell my father that I had PTSD. But what my children say to me now is, "Mom, I think you've been triggered. You're showing some signs of hypervigilance."
Education. Yeah, education was big there.
So wow. It's not an excuse, but it is part of our journey. And that's what acceptance looks like in my mind, is you accept that, yes, if I had a magic wand, this whole journey would be different, mostly for my children's sake, because they've had this is a very big burden for children to carry, which is why there needs to be family court reform. Because ultimately, it's not about me or my ex-husband or the parents. It's about the kids, and they're being horribly mistreated by this.
Yeah, I agree, because of ignorance, a lack of knowledge. And the thing is, they're obviously so busy, they're not taking the time to really learn this. Because I, like you, experienced the same thing. I told the judge, I said, "Listen, I just don't want him to have full custody. Like, I want him to go get help." I'm like, "He's abusive." The judge is like, "And what do you want me to do about it?" Like, what? Right. And it was hard. It was like, it was horrible, Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to touch on something you said really quickly. My truth is, I love that. And have that conversation with yourself, journal it, write it down. But my truth is this. So we have a couple questions I'm going to try to touch on really quickly. Mm-hmm. One of them was, how do I prepare for court? If I have to go to court with my abuser, what are some things you recommend? I know you talk about document. What are some things that you recommend?
First thing is, you're going to have to play act in court. And that's just the safest thing I can tell you, which means you got to dress well. You got to be, you've got to go in there and look stable as hell. And even though, and your abusers know how to look stable. They know how to fake it. So you've got to be, you cannot, unfortunately, you have to check your emotions all the time. And even though
at the door, check them.
Yeah, you can't, because it'll be used against you. The hysterical mom who's helicoptering and won't let go is the bias. That's what you're up against. So one of the things that I said was my abuser's attorney asked me repeatedly, trying to break me. Do you, I think you probably think that he's a terrible father, which is a trick question, because they want you to say yes, so that you can say, "See, this person is poisoning the children against this poor man." So instead, what I said was, I don't know. I'm not qualified for that to answer that. I said, I have always hoped that he would be the best father, because my children deserve that. So you spin your answers, so that you can talk about what you hoped, what you hope for, and try not to get into, those real true feelings that we have, which is, I want him out of my life. He's been
and they're
hurting.
valid feelings. Yeah. I love how you said look stable as hell, period. Because the truth of the matter is we could be crying and and I was in that courtroom hysterically crying, like, Your Honor, this is true. This didn't happen. It happened this way. And I just looked a hot mess. I looked nuts, even though everything that I was saying was true. And he was just sitting there looking so together and composed, and I looked crazy.
Yeah,
so I
exactly.
love how you say that, look stable, as composed as can be. Now, I understand if you're emotional, you want to crack up, feel free to do that as soon as you walk out. Feel free to do that.
I walked out, I went in the bathroom with my attorney and broke down and sobbed like a crazy woman
It's important. Don't, we're not crazy. We're telling you this intentionally because they try to use look, she's so emotional. Even when the police come to the house, someone calls 911, there's abuse. The woman or the victim is hysterical. The other person's calm and collected. And so they try to make the victim seem like the crazy person. Okay. So hopefully that helps. Okay. Any other pointers about being prepared for a court?
The thing that really helped me, besides having a very good attorney, I did everything that my attorney asked. So when my attorney said, give me a witness list, I gave one. She said to me, nobody had ever given a 10-person witness list before, but I did. So I did everything that she asked, but I also had documented. So if you're not in court yet, but you suspect it, like if you are co-parenting and you feel that this day is coming, you need to keep absolute records of everything. So that means whenever he called to cancel a visitation, I kept that in a handwritten diary and handed 5 years worth of diaries where he had canceled an average of 25 visitations a year for his weekend visits. Wow. So, that helped. So
document. Documentation is key. Yes. Document.
It really is, Amber. The other thing is, you need to be telling people, and that's a very hard thing to do, but you need to be telling school counselors and teachers, and trust me, most of them will look at you like you are part of the problem. Like you're that icky couple that has these domestic problems and I don't want to have anything to do with it. But you have to, because there has to be, number one, it helps you accept your truth. But most importantly, it gives people context. So when I'm looking crazy at Boy Scouts because my ex is doing stuff that nobody else can see but me, or I know what the buildup is, or I know what's coming around the corner, it starts to make sense if I tell the Boy Scout troop leader. Like I actually did talk to the pastor of the church where my sons were going to Boy Scouts, and I said, listen, you need to understand that my ex is an abuser, a physical abuser, who, by the way, if I had called 911, it would have been a felony. He would be in jail. And so, and he is abusive to everybody. Abusers are abusive to everyone. It's just that, the grocery store clerk maybe doesn't really care that asshole was, excuse my French, was just, terrible. But I said, but they can play, act, and manipulate. But what I'm telling you is they should not be in charge of children. And so I do say that, and I say, it's up to you to do with what you want, but I'm just telling you, this is what happened. Now, it's important when you tell people that you tell the truth. And I say that because sometimes we can, I'm not saying lie, but sometimes to make things quicker, we gloss over the details, and it's important to say the truth. It's important to say the truth and
be specific. Tell people, tell the truth. Make sure you're not, glamorizing it. Just be specific about it, and so they know something. Document the abuse. You guys, we partner with Victim's Voice and Document the Abuse. That's kind of a side note. So if you are in a situation where you need to be documenting your abuse, we have that app information for Victim's Voice and Document the Abuse. Send us an inbox or an email. Side note.
That's a great tool that you offer that.
Document, and tell someone. tell
Yeah.
someone, because, okay, seriously, Julie, how many times do we turn on the news and they say, oh my goodness, that family, he was so nice to them. They had the best relationship. They were such an, the American dream. Meanwhile, hell was breaking loose behind closed doors and no one ever knew.
Well, and that's true. We had a very big social life as a family. We were involved in our church. We were involved in soccer and Boy Scouts and I was a Sunday school teacher and you name it. And it was all I meant every word of it. I meant it, all of that, but it was all hiding, what was going on behind closed doors. And so there was a huge amount of confusion when this came out. But what I did learn is that when you tell people the truth, you're going to lose people for sure. Some people are just not going to want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And that happens.
Problem.
Yeah. That happens more than you would think. But here's the way that I've seen it. The truth helps our children because they are trying to sort out what's going on. They're learning about life. And when they don't know the truth, they internalize it and they think that there's something wrong with them. Yeah. And I have seen that repeatedly in my work as an advocate and as a speaker. I get emails from people all over the place, and there is so much pain that is happening to children. So for all of you who are on and you have any issues with your kids, please know you're not alone. These kids are having a devil of a time navigating this. And there is no playbook as a mother how to do this or as a parent how to do this. So I will tell you that the truth is the best thing. I mean, it's like I wasn't allowed to tell my children anything during that 8-month custody period because my lawyer was afraid it would be used against me in court. But prior to that, I did begin age-appropriate conversations, always age-appropriate, just like you would talk to them about sex, or dating or alcohol.
Age-appropriate is very important. Yeah. Because we can't emote to our children and they're 10, you know.
And you have to be, like the first time I started talking to my kids about violence, domestic violence, I did it with the help of a therapist. I had a therapist in the room with me because I didn't feel equipped to do it. So again, I was lucky. I happened to have a friend who was a therapist and, did it pro bono, but I guess the key is, as you're facing this, the support you need by telling your truth to others, you need those people in your life, the friends. I had 3 people who were friends who really were my sponsors. They were on the phone with me at all hours, listening to me as I would, dump the latest craze on it. But it was a team of friends, a good lawyer, a good therapist, a good domestic abuse shelter.
Healing happens in the community. You can't do this by yourself. No. And I know, forget the shame. Someone talks about the shame. Forget the shame. There's no space or time for shame. You have to have healing. You have to find safety. Have a community of safe people that you can be around that can help you. It's really, really important. I love how you talk about you had the different types of people that you had to support you. Okay, so people want to know, let me see. I've tried to document some more notes about parallel parenting, because I know you talk about how parallel parenting wasn't necessarily your choice, but it worked for you. Somebody asked about the app, so I'm going to put them up on the screen. Okay.
Yeah. For those who don't know, there's co-parenting where you, like, say your child wants to join a soccer team, then you and your ex talk about whether that's a good idea and okay, if it is, who's going to take them, blah, 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 blah. Well, all of those co-parenting decisions give an abuser license to abuse and exploit. So, somebody the abuser might say, no, I don't think they should play soccer, just to be contrary, just to see that it would hurt you. And so that's the kind of thing that goes on with co-parenting with an abuser. And it's very difficult. It's very hard, but it mostly just gives your abuser license to continue to do power and control. That's what it's about. They're given back the ability to use power and control and exploit you. again, a visual is they're a spider, you're a fly that they've put in back in their web, and they use you when they need you. Parallel parenting is where when the children are with you, they have a life separate. You all have a life separate from your ex. And when they're with your ex, you're not involved. It is very difficult. That means that short of major medical decisions, if it's a Monday and they're with your ex and he wants to take them to a midnight movie on a school night, you can't say anything about it.
Nope.
Why parallel parenting worked for me is because it ended the ability for him to use parenting to get at me. Because when I did this and this and this, he stopped engaging with me.
Oh, hold on, time out. Let's go back. So you started doing this, and this, right? I love it. And he couldn't engage with you anymore. He could no longer attack you. Yeah. And that's really what he wants to do.
That's what he wanted. He wanted to be able to say, I can take them to a midnight movie, on a school night. And so when I stopped engaging, in judging that and having a say in that, that meant that he stopped caring. He stopped trying to come up with ways to piss me off. Mm-hmm. And to prove that he was in control. Now, it didn't end everything. And there was, the downside is that my children had to navigate their father alone. And whereas prior to I started the parallel parenting after the custody suit. Prior to that, they never had to, because I would get involved. And I would protect them from, things that they should have been protected from. So what happened with that is they also learned how to navigate their father, and so their abuser. And so the silver lining was that they learned. Now, that is not ideal, and it is not done easily. It's fraught with problems, but it was better, the lesser of two evils in my circumstance.
Yeah, the parallel parenting is just hard because, midnight, absolutely they can't go to a midnight movie. They have to get up for school at 8:00 because that's what we're thinking rationally. But if we would go crazy trying to control that, you know what I mean? That is the worst. Trying to control it.
That's why you can't listen to it, because it'll make you crazy.
Can't see, can't say. Gray rocking is the way to go. Be as boring as a gray rock. Yes, no, they'll be here at 6. We're not having full conversations about anything important. Someone said, would the kids still talk to you about the things and ask for some guidance? So as the parallel parenting.
Yeah. Yes and no. They, as they got older, they moved away from talking to me about things. Twofold, I would say the reason is twofold. One is that they were trying to protect me, so they didn't want to see me hurt. And the other is they felt that they could handle it. I don't know what the right answer is. A good, maybe there's a study out there, or a good psychologist or somebody who could speak to that. But I will say that I realized that this was their journey. I saw an end to my relationship with my abuser. First it was in divorce, and then it was when my children turned 18. Because then the courts didn't, once they turn 18, actually once they turn 17, the courts go like this isn't our problem anymore. And that form of abuse ends abruptly. And so I get a break from that. My children never do. Even if they opt to never see their father again, they still, this is in their head. This is their father. This is their parent. Yeah. And they will always have to deal with this. So I started to think, again, it was just my thought. I don't, you all will have to figure out how to navigate this yourself. And some of you already have. I just wanted them to learn how to do it. So I was there in the emergencies. I would say as they're gotten older, they have, one comes to me more than the other about wanting to bounce things off of me, that kind of thing. Interestingly enough, one of my children believes, and maybe they both do, that they would have been better off if their abusive parent had never been in their life.
Wow.
And so I didn't have that option. I didn't have that option to give them. I didn't think that was a good option in the beginning, but the courts don't give you that option. Even if they give you full parenting rights, they can always come back and take it back, 10 years later, as long as you have minor children.
I really like how you talk about allowing the kids to navigate, because I think as parents, we know that at some point they're going to have to scrape their knee and get up and brush it off themselves. We're not going to always be there to be able to kiss their boo-boos, to guide them through relationships or friendships. They're going to have to navigate it. Unfortunately, you don't want to have to push them out into the world to navigate it with their own parent who happens to be an abuser or a narcissist abuser or whatever. But when you go to parallel parenting, I like how you talked about how you really are allowing them to navigate and get to know their parent for themselves. They know them. They've lived with them. They've experienced the abuse.
Right.
And you're letting go of that control of to kiss their, you're there for them when they come in the door. You're there for them to support them, but you're not necessarily holding their hand every step of the way, because you know when they do that, you're getting abused too. Hey, Kimberly, yes, parallel parenting is essential. There was a question that said,
let me just throw in one thing about one little tip with parallel parenting. I highly recommend that you have a couple of adults in your children's lives who can be a surrogate when you're not there. So like somebody they can go to and say, is this normal that my dad is doing this or saying this? That was also really important for my kids, that they had another adult that they could trust besides me, besides their parents, who they could turn to and say, is this normal? Because kids they do not know how to navigate this. I mean, we barely do.
Yeah, really. Somebody had asked earlier, did your children get therapy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the answer is yes. It was a while back, but they did get therapy.
Yeah. Well, actually, it really since their middle school years, they've had it on and off as needed.
Okay. So definitely reach out, maybe through your insurance company or through whatever you have, to see if you can get the children counseling, which can be in addition to them seeing their parent as well. Someone mentioned, I'm going to try to rephrase a question. What would you do if you're afraid that the parent is going to punish the child in an effort to punish you? I think I got that.
That does happen. And there were situations like that. And that's where that other adult can be helpful, who can explain that, look, you just got used as a pawn. And I would say that has been probably my biggest challenge after he withdrew the custody suit, and then I went into a parallel parenting situation. The biggest challenge was trying to help my children heal from those types of circumstances. And I still tried to prevent them if I could. It's not like I went like this. But I, as they got older, I turned more to saying, do you need my help here? Or this is something that I think you are going to need my help on. Like I would let them lead, in that way. And
that's good, Julie. I like that.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't want to talk to you though, and you got to deal with that too.
Yeah, that's good. Accepting that, and like you said, having other adults in their life that they can turn to and say, hey, is this normal? Is this not normal? Shannon, I love how you're talking about, she's a court order reunification counselor, and that kids make it clear how they feel. So having someone they can talk to is really, really important. Kimberly said that she takes her kids to a therapist after seeing their father. That's really important.
I like that too.
We have had Julie pinned down for the past hour, you guys. If anybody has any last minute questions, otherwise, we're definitely going to let her go soon. Julie, thank you so much. Like, seriously, we just touched the tip of the iceberg. But listen, I'm putting her information up online, julieboydcole@gmail.com. You can feel free to communicate with her via email. And of course, listen, y'all know I don't have to get her books. This is just like a step-by-step legal representation that you need. How to co-parent with an abusive ex and keep your sanity. Let's get, like she talks about floating in the middle of the ocean. Let's get those kids safe and you to the shore safely. And can you hold up the other book real quick? Dear Family Court Judge. Can you hold that one up?
This
Both
is
can be found on Amazon.
Attorneys.
one for your attorneys, because they need the help to
It
navigate.
gives them the context that what you're dealing with. But you know, I do want to say this, Lisa. I'm so impressed with the comments. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to answer all the questions and so forth. But I know how sad this is that this even goes on. We shouldn't have this issue at all, but we do. But you know, it's good that everybody realizes that they're on this call in the first place. They're not alone, and it's from each other that we can draw strength.
Agree. So I'm going back a little bit, but you talked about when you get legal representation, talk about the abuse. Don't let them stifle you talking about the abuse. Could you just touch on that really quickly?
Sure, absolutely. Most attorneys want you to not talk about the abuse, especially especially if there's not criminal charges. You know, most do not have criminal charges. Most victims never call the police, or they do, but they drop the charges later. They don't want you to talk about that in family court. You've got to talk about it, and it's the way that you talk about it. You have to be, again, that emotional, calm, stable. This is what happened to me. And in my case, my ex's attorney used that to try to say, look, she's fabricating. And he worked me for an hour trying to get me to crack on any of this. You're as matter of fact as you can be about it, but you've got to say it. It's the truth. And that's what you have to say. And by the way, when you tell other people, especially school teachers and so forth, I always said, if you see anything in the classroom, I want to alert you that my child is the child of domestic abuse. And so you may notice that some things don't look or add up right. I want you to have context that he is a child of domestic abuse. And if you see anything, please say something, you know.
Advocating for your child.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's really, really good. You guys, hopefully, anyway, Julie, anything else you want to share? I'm trying to catch up with all these questions. I put the apps back up.
I see the thing about the text, and that here's one other thing I do want to say. For your healing, when your abuser knows, when you have minor children together, most courts across the world, in the industrialized world, are going to make you have communication with your abuser. And so you keep the communication as short and brief as possible. Do not engage in anything at all that is not absolutely necessary. Think of it like a business text, no matter what they say to you. Now, it's hard because we want to engage, but you work hard not to. As soon as your children are out of the clutches of family court, and that's usually about age 16, when your youngest is about 16, 17, family court won't touch it anymore because they don't care. Those are teenagers, they don't care. But, you know, by and large, your judge may be different. But as soon as they're at that stage, delete their email. Do block them on social media. Go no contact, which means you really never Google their name. You block them on your social media. You block them on your text. My phone to this day has a block on my ex. And I'll tell you why that's important. They will always try to engage. I accidentally unblocked my ex this past Christmas. Now, I'm out of that relationship for 15 years. And he texted me on Christmas Eve. I was with our children, and he was feeling, I'm sure, like he wanted to get involved in that somehow. And I was like, wait a second, he's been blocked for 3 years. What the heck? You know, but they will never give up. And so you have to block in every way. But the judges in family court will not look kindly on that. So you have to keep them. You can't block them.
Not now, not when you're in the middle of it. But
no, what I did, though, is I created an email account just for my ex to email me, because I couldn't have that hitting me, you know, notifying me every 2 seconds.
Separate communication. Separate communication. I like the Our Family Wizard, Amy. I've heard of that too.
Yes, that's a good one.
But also keeping a separate email address. This is where you communicate with me. Hey Karen, hey, block. Yes, block them. You don't need to know. Don't let your curiosity kill don't. Just get yourself to a safe space and don't worry about them. And I do remember I have the if you guys need someone who's concerned about documenting, I have victim voice apps, and you can also get in contact with us about document the abuse. Julie, thank you for being amazing. Thank you for just she's not that.
One last thing. I just have to say this. I'm so sorry, but
you're fine.
Remember, safety plan. Never assume that your abuser, especially if they're a physical abuser, will not hurt you. So you got it. I'm sure that your center has a written safety plan for you and your children. Please don't ever take that for granted.
I agree. I mean, I emphasize that so much, Julie, because listen, don't ever think that they will never hurt you. Don't ever think, well, it's been so long. Just always protect yourself and stay safe. If they threaten you, believe them. If they threaten to hurt or kill you, believe them. If they threaten to slash your tires, believe them. Believe them and do anything that you can to protect
yourself. Call the police if they text you.
Call the police. Please don't think, well, they would never. You don't need to go see them one more time. You don't need to be in the parking lot. And I mean, I know it sounds like redundant, but we have to say it because someone needs to hear it tonight, Julie. So these are the apps. Someone just asked for them again. Victim's Voice, Document the Abuse. And Julie's books are How to Co-Parent with an Abusive Ex and Keep Your Sanity, and Dear Family Court Judge. All right, you guys. So thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. Family Wizard is an app that the court system uses so that you can speak and all the information is documented. All right, so awesome. Julie, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Glad to have you on. You guys, she's written great articles, and I'll tag some of them in the comments as well so you guys can read them as well, all right? We'll see you guys later. Julie, please don't go anywhere. You hang out, but we're going to say goodbye to everyone else. We'll see you later. Later, Nat. Bye, guys. Bye.
Goodbye, all. Stay safe.